Hello again and welcome to the Memoir channel. My name is Nikki Smart and today I'm going to be speaking with Marion Roach Smith about her book, The Memoir Project, a thoroughly non-standardized text for writing and life. So Marion is a memoir coach and an author. She's written several books, loads of memoirs. She's also written for the New York Times, for the Los Angeles Times, for Good Housekeeping, for Vogue. She has helped so many people improve their writing and to actually finally get that memoir out there. So I'm super thrilled to have Marion here today, and let's go talk to her and find out all we can. All right. Hi, Marion, and welcome to the Memoir channel.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled that you're here. I've been reading all about you, and you're very impressive.
Oh, thank you.
And I loved how you started your book saying that you were born in a library right next to, the catalog drawer.
Yeah, well, it's my mother might dispute that a little bit, but that's the way I remember it. And that's one of the fundamental principles of memoir.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. And you said you want, your dream is to be part of that Dewey Decimal System. I thought,
Yeah,
your book
my
is so
big
funny. It's so funny. Yeah.
thank you. I so appreciate that. I loved writing it. And it was a challenge from my sister, who's also a writer. She
Hmm.
said, after I'd been teaching memoir for a while, she said, well, why don't you write a book on how to write memoir? And it's just been such a joy because it's been out for a good long time. And my publisher invited me to update it and they republished it, which is, wow, the greatest thing that can happen in publishing, really. So I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, brilliant, brilliant. So I was going to ask you just to maybe talk a little bit about your experience working at the New York Times, because you said you got there straight off the bat, right out of college.
Yeah.
Seems like trial
So
by fire a little bit,
it
maybe.
was a trial by fire, absolutely. There was a glorious time in the world, and I'm sure this was true in every major city, where there were tons and tons of summer jobs in magazines, newspapers, radio, television. And in New York City in that time, New York was just flooded with kids working in journalism, trying it out in these summer jobs. And those entry level jobs don't exist anymore, which is really tragic
Mm.
because it was so much fun and there were so many of us and we met each other in bars and every newspaper had its own bar or its own deli or whatever. And so it was an extraordinary thing to be at the New York Times at 21 years old. And that particular summer in New York City was wild. We had a mass murderer on the loose called the Son of Sam, who was shooting people. We had a blackout that lasted for days. We had an extraordinary club scene in New York that was the heyday of Studio 54. So it's a very vibrant memory of for me being a 21-year-old and being at the New York Times. And then there's the fact that I was surrounded by the best of the best in
Hmm.
journalism. And that became incredibly apparent right away. So every memory is big of my time there and learning from people who had won Pulitzers for doing extraordinary things. My real immediate boss was Sidney Schanberg, who won his Pulitzer for being one of the last people to leave Cambodia and for exposing what was really going on in
Wow.
Cambodia. And to talk to him every day, to sit next to him all day long and listen to him and understand what journalism is meant to do was a formative experience. He also really
Um,
stuck up for the little guy, and I really learned that from him.
yeah. No, I mean, what a wonderful gift to have that. How lovely. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, I was going to say, how many people do you think you've actually helped write a memoir at this point?
Well, this week I got book 108 from a writer who has worked with me. And it made me sit down and count the books on my shelf. So 108 people have thought to send me a copy of the books that they've written working with me. This one comes out in the fall. It's an extraordinary book called A Little Less Broken: How an Autism Diagnosis Finally Made Me Whole by Marion Shimbari. And it'll be out in the fall, as I said. So I think that's an extraordinary thing. 108 books. I've long ago lost count of how many personal essays, opinion pieces that my students have published. But it's true that we teach 1,000 people or so a month at the Memoir Project, depending on what the size of the webinars can be. So thousands,
Okay.
literally
Yeah, I
thousands
would
of
think that.
people.
I
Yeah.
think, I think that is probably very true.
Yes.
And you're still running this, so people can sign up now, and they can be anywhere in the world because it's all
Yes.
online.
It's wonderful because it's going online 8 years ago after teaching in person for more than 20 years. I got a global audience and a global perspective. So we recently had somebody from Karachi, Pakistan in a master class. And when we were signing off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, my time,
Mm-hmm.
it was the call to prayer in Karachi. So we could hear the muezzin coming through the headphones. So she was getting up at 2 in the morning to take these classes and taking them with me, which was incredibly, I'm
Wow.
so honored. But she also taught us so much. She kind of laughed at us. She'd never been in the United States. And she kind of laughed at us and said, your racism isn't the only kind of racism in the world. And we were able to hear about the oppressed and the oppressors in her experience. And
Mm-hmm.
the global perspective helps everyone. So I'm so grateful that we can have all the time zones represented
Yeah.
in the classes, because I now teach them at all hours of the day and night.
Yeah. No, you're so right, because the more we can hear each other and understand each other, the better off we're going to be. Yeah.
Yes, I genuinely
Um,
believe that the best way to change the world is to tell each other our stories.
I think you're absolutely right. Now, having said that, how many memoirs do you think you've read?
I'd like to say as many as it takes to be able to teach well, but every day I read another one. I
Yeah.
hear a different perspective. People say to me all the time, you must have heard everything by now. No, because the what I refer to as the human pilot light, the thing we keep lit, and how we do that is unique to everyone's experience. And there's always a particular combination of events that went into keeping yours lit.
Hmm.
And those stories, you cannot read enough of them. You cannot get to the end of those stories ever, because we all need help getting through in this world. And to understand, I interviewed somebody recently who it was one single second grade teacher who was kind to him, and in arguably the most abusive childhood I've ever heard of. But one single person said to him, "You're a smart little boy." And that's all. And that's what he lived on. And it kept
Mm.
him going. And he's a magnificent success in life now. Can partner with people, can have children, can, just remarkable.
It
So
is.
yeah, I think I love the stories, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm finding that too, just by interviewing people, and I just can't believe what people endure and what they go through, and how well they manage to find their way through to the other side and find something positive and uplifting. And yeah, it's remarkable. It's the human
It
spirit. It's just
is.
lovely, lovely,
It,
lovely.
It is. When we had a very high profile arrest in the United States a few years ago during the beginning of Me Too, and that day my email box just blew up. It was people writing in saying, "I've never told my story of abuse. It's been 38 years. It's been 35 years." And I thought, oh, good, we're at a different place. And what I noticed was people living differently because they were writing about their stories. And I ended up interviewing a whole bunch of therapists and asking them, what am I witnessing here? Help me be a better teacher. And one of them said, when you get your hand on your story, you don't change the outcome, but you are in control of the outcome. And I thought that was fascinating. And then not long after, we had a Supreme Court hearing here in the United States, where we took in a Supreme Court nominee who had been accused of sexual harassment, sexual
Hmm.
abuse. And
Hmm.
my email box dried up. And so people got afraid again. And during that glorious period, I had so many people in my classes who were writing about abuse. They were writing and getting their hands on their stories. And then it's just going back down to a trickle. So we're able to help each other, but we're also I'm actually able to see the market forces that drive the permission that some people need
That's
to
amazing.
tell their stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
amazing. The layers that are
Yeah.
going on there. Huh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Would you possibly read us a little section from your book? Is that possible? If you
Oh,
if you
let's
have
see.
if you have something, and I got to tell you,
Oh.
even your chapter titles, I love them. That Galileo in Walmart and having sex with Roger and
Thank
life
you.
in the morgue. I mean, they're all, yeah.
That's
I
lovely. Have you ever been in a Walmart? Do you
Oh
have
yes,
Walmart
yes. No, I mean, I was in America for quite a while, so
Yeah.
I know exactly what a Walmart is.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what happened. I use that metaphor for as your subconscious. If you
Hmm.
when you step into that crazy Walmart sized subconscious of yours, you just come away with too many details.
Right.
I always forget what I came in for when I go into Walmart. So, um, you know,
Yeah.
I think that that's a good metaphor. So I can read you the opening because you referred to it as the library. What would you
Yes,
have a
yes,
preference?
yes.
That'd be
No, I
great.
think that'd be lovely. I'm just going to
All
put you
right.
on speaker view. I'm going to give you the whole thing. Here we go. It's all you.
So here's how the book, The Memoir Project, opens. It's called Required Reading. This is a simple tale. I was born in the Little Neck Public Library in Queens, New York, next to the card catalog. Well, that's the way I remember it, and I'm sticking to that story no matter what. Go into therapy, and you're likely to be asked, what is your first memory? And for many people, this is a rare opportunity to unlock the floodgates, remove the tourniquet, and let the platelets flow. But when I want to investigate myself, I type. And when I ask myself to recreate those first moments, what gets typed up is me, standing on my tiptoes, peering into a card catalog. It was a long wooden drawer that may have pulled out for a mile and a half, like a great straight snake, right at hip level to my mother, exactly at eye level to me. It slid out, and I waited. I want you to see something, I think she said. A gorgeous woman, I would have done anything she told me. This was the person who held the keys to the kingdom of power, the parent who had taught me to read, sitting with me one day as the letters turned into words, and the words into sentences, and the sentences into the authority every child craves. To learn, to retell, and to entertain. My mother's red fingernails, lacquered to match her lips, were flipping like sexy windshield wipers through the cards, one after the other. Where were we going this time? I wondered. Maybe I was 5. And it goes on to answer the question of what she was going to go show me, which was my dad's name
Hmm.
in the card catalog. And as you said, from that moment forward, I set my sights on being in the card catalog. That's what I wanted more than anything in the world. And I learned to type when I was 5. I learned to write poetry when I was about 6. I mean, for me, not for anybody else. And I just grew up with a sense that if we share our stories, we really share our humanity. So
Hmm.
thank you
Yeah,
for asking.
yeah, yeah. No, lovely. And I mean, I was actually reading some of it in a coffee shop, and I laughed out loud with your dad when he said, "Just painted. What nationality are you? Croatian? Yes, fantastic national colors. Just paint the house."
Yeah, my father
Oh,
was
too
not one for
funny.
noticing his environment. So when he was left alone to decide the paint colors of the dining room, he went a little crazy. But it was gorgeous, and my poor mother, the screaming that went on when she saw it when she came home. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Now, why do you think? I mean, I guess we've kind of covered it, but why people want to write memoirs? Because I know so many people that say they want to write their memoir, they want to write something down. I mean, is it a way of us proving that we were here? I mean, have you ever thought
I
about
think
what?
so. I think initially it's that people frequently feel that they have something to share, that other people would like to read their stories. And when I really get into it with people, and I talk to memoir writers all day long, every day, and have for 30 years, what I know to be true is that memoir writing is the single greatest portal to self-discovery. So what happens is as soon as you start writing it, you get a feeling that's unlike any other feeling. And it's not ego, it's discovery. It's not just me immortalizing myself. It's me actually understanding myself. And I'm sure you have friends that are smarter than my friends, but my friends mostly talk like this. So I went to this great restaurant last night. Like, you got to go. I mean, it was just great. Now I learned nothing, right? I don't even know like where the restaurant is, but that's the way we talk. But
Mhm,
when asked to dive into why you love Italian food, or why you dropped religion, or why your preference for dogs over cats is real,
mhm,
you ask yourself some pretty hard questions, and you are able to start to palpate back to the moments that compounded that passion or desire or preference,
mhm.
and things start to make sense. And
Right.
you realize, my God, I'm connected to my grandmother's love of gardening. My goodness, my lack of faith has everything to do with my surge in my political awareness. Oh my goodness, those two things don't live in concert in my head.
Mhm.
Understanding ourselves is not half bad. So I'm a great believer in it.
And it's not easy always because being honest with yourself is quite difficult sometimes, isn't it?
Yes. And honestly, I think that if more people wrote memoir, we'd have a lot less trouble in this world. If people would just literally think before they speak,
Right.
if they'd try to examine why they feel that way, they'd
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's an inheritance, for instance. And, every bias can be exploded. Every inheritance can be examined. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to take delivery on all of your family's politics, religions, preferences, food preferences, and people just forget that. And memoir allows you to say, why am I still believing these things? Right?
Yeah.
Why do I still believe that?
Yeah.
The numbers of stories I've handled of generations of alcohol abuse and anger and violence, for instance, and then somebody stops the cycle. Wow. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you grew up in a big brawling drunken family doesn't mean you have to perpetuate that. Wow,
Yeah.
what an awareness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, very, very true. I know that I myself, I wrote a memoir, and when I first started writing it, I was too angry, and everything that came out was just rah. I know, well, no one wants to read that, so I had to wait a bit till I could sort of get a better feel for it. And I also noticed that I kind of had this idea in my head, I'm going to write this, and then it completely went to something different when I started digging in. I'm like,
Yes.
oh, so I actually want to write about this, not that. But yeah, so I agree with you. It's very it is very enlightening. It's like a way into yourself, absolutely. And quite cathartic
Yeah,
if you
that
do it
what
right.
happened to you. Yeah, what happened to you happens to a lot of people. I refer to it as the roll away the stone moment in the story of in the Christian story of the discovery of Jesus. We have this roll away the stone. We have
Mm-hmm.
hymns about it. It's an expression though that I use, and it's not really it's certainly an indication of where I learned it, but it's not an indication necessarily of my Christian beliefs anymore. But it's still an expression that people understand. And what I mean by that is you sit down to write one thing, and this other thing says, get out of the way. No, you have to tell this story first. And it has
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. I was on deadline for a book 3 books ago or 2 books ago, and absolutely was supposed to be writing that book. And what happened was a friend of mine killed herself, and I loved her dearly, and I was
Mm-hmm.
devastated by the loss. And the story of us demanded to be written. I've never published it. I've never shared it with anybody, but I had to write it down. It would not even leave me alone. It
Yeah.
was, and that's a real thing. And you need to write that and get it out of the way. The other thing that happens is you sit down to write a memoir, you say you were driven by anger in the first draft. And
Mm-hmm.
then you realize what you've got. And I always say to people, let's see what you've got. And then let's find the actual story in there. What is it really about? Oh, wow. People say, oh, I'm going to get revenge. I say, well, that's not going to work. But if you write about revenge and the pursuit of revenge and then what happened, you'll find you have a better story. So
Mm-hmm.
it changes. Even when you're sure you're writing one thing, what gets revealed is all that pathological background,
Mm-hmm.
and you start writing the truth.
Mm-hmm. Ah, it's lovely. I love it. So, okay, what do you have coming up for you next? What are you working on right now?
So I'm always writing. I'm thinking about a piece that I'd like to write, a piece of memoir that I'd like to write. My sister and I have utterly different versions of our childhood, and as does every single person who's ever had a sibling. And we were at a dinner party recently, and I told a story that I thought was great, and everybody laughed. There were like 15 people at the table. Everybody laughed, and she waited till the laughter died down, and then she said, "That never happened."
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
love that. So I'd like to poke around in there. I think that's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing. And I think that everybody I talk to, the first or second question they ask me, they either ask, what if you're going to upset people?
Right.
If there's somebody, right? And the other one is, what if your sister has a different version? And your sister does have a different version.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I'm really interested in that. And then I'm just going to keep teaching for, as long as they'll let me, because every
Mm-hmm.
day is an adventure in what I do. Every
Mm-hmm.
single day somebody brings something that astonishes me. And
Mm.
you know, I just got off a call yesterday with a group of people worldwide who all have ALS, which is a
Mm-hmm.
horrific, neuromuscular degenerative disease. And they were brought to me by a woman I worked with 6 years ago who was in her 30s when she was diagnosed with ALS. And when I got her email 6 years later, I was very surprised that she was still alive and very, very, very grateful. She's
Mm-hmm.
just published a big book with Simon and Schuster called Hope Fights Back. And she's performed, and and succeeded in a marathon in every one of the 50 states in the United States on her recumbent
Wow.
bicycle in the last 6 years. And she's brought this group of ALS patients to Memoir. And
Mm-hmm.
they're going to tell their story together. My goodness, how
Mm.
fantastic are we? What lucky recipients we are of
Mm-hmm.
that kind of story. So, in other words, every day I'm invited into something that's challenging and interesting, but is also about helping other people get their voice out into the world. So, I can't imagine why I would ever stop.
Yeah. And I got to think that's so healing as well. So healing.
I think it's healing for everybody. I've
Yeah.
I've seen Memoir do extraordinary things with people and clarify for them what happened.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, even when you read other people's memoir and you suddenly see, oh, they had that same feeling and those same thoughts that I've never been able to like say, but it's that then
Yes,
the vulnerability, and suddenly you feel, well, I can also be vulnerable then. If they can, I can. Yeah.
that's exactly, and you just hit on it. That's exactly right. It's perfect.
Mm.
Vulnerability.
Mm.
There is no writing memoir without vulnerability. You must bring
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability to it. And if you start with anger, that's fine. If you start with rage, that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually you're going to have to get to vulnerability because I need to witness your transcendent change. The way I teach it, memoir just goes from here to there, from when you could not do something to when you could, from when you
Okay.
did not know something to when you did, or when you had to quit something to when you quit it, and how life gets better. And in there, I have to see your transcendent change from
Mm-hmm.
not knowing it to working hard to learning it to seeing what happens after you know it.
Right.
And that is an extraordinary invitation for people to go in. And it's not setting the record straight, it's about how did you change?
Mm-hmm.
And when we witness that, it feeds our belief that we can change too.
Mm-hmm. No, it's beautiful. Well, thank you for doing this. I mean, thank you for helping all these people and teaching all these people. What a lovely job you're doing.
Well, thank you for starting
Yeah.
this project because I think it's the more we talk about it, the
Mm-hmm.
more I mean, there was a time not that long ago when people thought memoir was just a self indulgent genre. And
Yeah.
it's not. It's not at all. It's about witnessing the transcendent change of others. And what could be
Mm-hmm.
more inspiring than that? So
Yeah.
I don't teach autobiography where you just recount your life. I teach memoir. And
Yeah.
memoir to me is not a plot driven genre, it's an argument driven genre. You're arguing something, and all you're arguing is what you know after what you've been through in that transcendent change
Mm-hmm.
that that grief is a process that must be gone through slowly. Okay, show me how you learned that, and we'll have ourselves a good book. So
Mm-hmm.
you're
Mm-hmm.
so welcome. I'm so honored to be asked anything I know.
What is one of your favorite memoirs? Was that too hard a question?
No, the only book I ever give anyone to read when they ask for a suggestion is Caroline Knapp's book called Drinking, a Love Story. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the best title of any memoir
That's
ever.
great.
And it's got a perfect structure. And it's years old at this point, still in print, but the book has the perfect structure. And you'll learn and you'll say, wait a minute, there's a lot I still don't know about her. Yes. So go read her other books because each of them is from one area of her expertise.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't take on her whole life. And in that, you learn that memoir is not about your whole life. Memoir recounts one aspect of your transcendent change. So I
Mm-hmm.
think she's great. It's Knapp, Knapp, and the book
Okay.
is fabulous. And I love it.
I'm when I post this interview, I'm going to put your website underneath, and there people can sign up for your class there, right?
Yes, yes, we teach a lot of classes.
And I think I remember seeing on there that you had like 10 books you really need to read. That was on
Yes.
yours, right? Yes. And so
So I've
I
got
imagine
I've
that one
got
is on there. Yes.
yes, that is on there. I've got 25 books that taught me to write, is what I
Okay.
put up. And so they're not books on writing. They're books that I read that I remember saying, oh, is that how you characterize someone? And that would be Truman Capote, taught me everything that I could possibly need to know about characterization. Extraordinary writer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put up books that taught me about dialogue and books that taught me about humor, because that's how we learn. We
Yeah.
read, and you've got to read, and you've got to read a lot to be a writer. And
Yeah.
I have on my website the list of books that taught me.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you would like to put other than your website?
The website is perfect. And
Okay.
I also have a podcast called the Qwerty Podcast,
Ah,
which is up
yes.
there. And we're episode 120, I think. So there's lots and lots of living writers there that I've done this with and
Mm-hmm.
talked to about
Mm-hmm.
writing. So that would be great too. But thank you for
Okay.
asking.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
You're
And
so welcome.
and
Let me
I
know when
think
it's up.
I
Well, I'll
will.
publicize the hell out of it.
And I think I might be signing up for your course. I feel this urge.
I would
So,
love that. Let me
yeah.
know.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Be well. Take
You
care.
too. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.